The gavel hit like thunder, shaking the courtroom into silence. At the center of it all sat Judge Judy, her presence commanding, but her eyes carrying something quieter today: exhaustion. Not weakness, weariness. For years, she'd seen every trick in the book, every performance people staged under the fluorescent lights of her courtroom. But this woman, Melissa Crane, was different. Her crutches clattered against the floor like props in a bad play, the neck brace perfectly centered, every groan rehearsed to perfection. The audience pitied her. The insurance lawyer rolled his eyes. And Judy? She sat still, studying her like a puzzle she'd already solved. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. You say you can't walk without those crutches, Judy began, voice even but tired. And that the accident left you permanently disabled? Melissa nodded slowly, forcing her breath into shallow gasps. Yes, Your Honor. I haven't walked properly in months. A ripple of sympathy spread through the courtroom, but not from Judy. She leaned forward, elbows on the bench, eyes narrowing not in suspicion, but in resolve. The underdog of her own courtroom, fighting not for power, but for truth in a world that had turned honesty into entertainment. That's interesting, Judy said softly, almost kindly. Because last night, someone sent me a video. The words hung like a thundercloud ready to burst. Melissa froze, eyes wide, color draining from her face. Judy didn't move, she didn't need to. The silence itself became her weapon. The camera cut to Melissa's shaking hands gripping her crutches. The audience murmured, and for the first time, Judy wasn't the hunter, she was the underestimated one. They didn't see her coming. Not this time. Judy reached for a folder, thin, plain, almost innocent. She tapped it twice with her finger. Let's just say it involves a wedding reception, a dance floor, and a woman who moves better than most athletes I've seen. Gasps filled the air. Melissa's lips parted, ready to speak, but the truth was already walking toward her. Judy let the moment breathe, her quiet strength louder than any gavel. Because today wasn't about power. It was about proof. And proof was undefeated. If you think Judge Judy's seen it all, you haven't seen this. Hit like if you believe truth always finds its way to the surface. The courtroom air grew heavier after Judy's last words. The tension didn't just hang, it pressed down, thick and suffocating, like humidity before a storm. Melissa Crane adjusted her neck brace, her fingers trembling slightly, eyes darting between Judy and the gallery. Every breath she took sounded louder than it should have, every movement choreographed to keep her illusion alive. But Judy wasn't watching her pain, she was watching her performance. For years, Judy had fought uphill battles against manipulation. She wasn't the queen of this courtroom, she was its last line of defense. Every day, someone came in trying to twist sympathy into currency. But what Melissa was doing? This wasn't just deceit, it was theft from those who genuinely suffered. Judy knew the stakes better than anyone, every fake claim makes it harder for the real victims to be believed. And that truth burned in her chest like a moral fever. Mrs. Crane, Judy began, voice measured, you said the insurance company owes you $250,000 for permanent disability? Melissa nodded, voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Your Honor. I can't work, can't drive, can't even walk my dog. They've ruined my life. Her tone cracked on the last word, just enough to sound real. A few people in the audience looked sympathetic again. Judy caught that, her jaw tightening. Sympathy was powerful. And dangerous. Ruined your life, Judy repeated quietly, as if tasting the words. Tell me, Mrs. Crane, how did they manage to do that? The woman blinked, confused. By refusing to pay me after my accident. Judy's expression softened, but her eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes that had seen every lie ever dressed in tears, didn't blink. And you've been unable to move freely since then? Melissa nodded quickly, too quickly. Yes, Your Honor. The pain, it's constant. Some days, I can't even get out of bed. Must be difficult, Judy said gently. Especially when you're trying to stay active socially. Melissa hesitated. I don't really go out, Your Honor. Really? Judy asked, leaning back in her chair, almost casually. So no parties? No celebrations? No dancing? The question dropped like a trapdoor. Melissa blinked again, stammering, "And no, of course not." "Interesting," Judy murmured, turning to the bailiff. "Because my clerk seems to think otherwise." That single line shifted the entire courtroom. The defense attorney perked up, the audience leaned in, and Melissa's composure began to fray. But Judy stayed perfectly still, an underdog facing deceit with nothing but quiet certainty. She didn't have the backing of a massive legal machine. All she had was truth, and years of experience spotting wolves in human clothing. As the insurance lawyer began speaking, the stakes became clearer. "Your Honor," he said, voice carrying a hint of vindication, "this case isn't just about our client. It's about dozens of similar claims filed in the same pattern, identical injuries, identical timelines, identical payout requests." Judy turned her head slightly, her tone calm but firm. "You're implying a pattern of fraud." "Exactly, Your Honor. This claimant fits the mold. The difference is, we have something others didn't." Melissa's head snapped up. "They're lying," she blurted out. "I'm telling the truth. I've suffered enough." Judy didn't flinch. "You'll get your chance to prove that. But I'll warn you now, proof can be a dangerous thing when it's not on your side." The courtroom murmured again. Judy's words weren't loud, but they echoed with weight, the kind that didn't need volume to make impact. Every syllable felt like the ticking of a moral clock, counting down to exposure. Beneath the bench, Judy flexed her hands slightly. Years of holding order in the chaos had taken their toll. She wasn't a young fighter anymore, not a sharp-tongued icon chasing ratings. She was an old warrior fighting to remind people what justice really meant. But being the underdog never scared her, it sharpened her. Because she knew that when truth is cornered, it doesn't retreat. It bites. Melissa's lawyer rose, his voice steady but cautious. "Your Honor, my client's medical reports confirm." Judy raised a hand, silencing him mid-sentence. "Medical reports can say a lot, counselor. So can people's actions." She turned her gaze back to Melissa, who looked ready to collapse under it. Judy didn't gloat. She never did. Her power came from stillness, the kind of calm that unnerves liars more than anger ever could. "Mrs. Crane," she said softly, "when you swore your oath at the start of this hearing, did you tell the truth?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you understand that lying under oath is a criminal offense?" The woman swallowed. "Yes." Judy leaned forward, elbows on the bench, voice barely above a whisper but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Then let's hope that Facebook video isn't what I think it is." The gallery reacted before Melissa could. A hush rippled across the room, followed by the faint scratching of reporters' pens and the mechanical whir of cameras adjusting focus. Judy ignored them all. She wasn't chasing headlines, she was chasing truth. Inside, though, she felt something shift. For the first time in months, maybe years, the old fire flickered again, the one that reminded her why she sat behind this bench. Not for fame. Not for applause. But to stand between justice and performance. Between truth and exploitation. Between those who fight for fairness and those who fake their pain for profit. That's what made her the underdog. Not because she lacked power, but because she stood alone in defending something that the world kept cheapening. Melissa's attorney tried to recover. "Your Honor, I must object to this line of questioning unless the prosecution provides context for this alleged video." Judy cut him off, her tone suddenly steel. "The context, counselor, is reality. Something your client appears allergic to." A quiet ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Not mockery, relief. The kind that comes when someone finally says what everyone's thinking. Judy didn't smile. She didn't need to. She just turned a page in her notes, pen clicking once against the wood. The stakes were clear now. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about one lie. It was about credibility, something the justice system can't survive without. One false victim poisons the well for 1,000 real ones. And Judge Judy was the last person willing to drink that poison quietly. Melissa stared down at her lap, eyes glistening, her voice trembling just enough to sound human again. I'm not lying, she whispered. I'm not. Judy's voice softened, not cruel, but cold in its precision. Then you won't mind if we verify every word you've said. The woman looked up, startled. How? Judy leaned back. Simple. We'll let the evidence speak. And unlike people, evidence doesn't rehearse. Her tone was final. The underdog had drawn her line in the sand. The next move would decide everything. The audience didn't realize it, but this wasn't just another case, it was a crossroads. Either Judy would prove that truth still had teeth, or deceit would walk free again under the shield of sympathy. She wouldn't let that happen. The courtroom lights flickered once as the clerk prepared the exhibits. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, like the world itself was listening. Judy straightened in her chair, gaze steady, heart calm. She knew what came next. The truth was on its way, and it was about to be loud. The next morning light seeped through the tall courtroom windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. The world outside moved fast, but inside Judge Judy's courtroom, time seemed to slow to a heartbeat's rhythm. Each second was deliberate, measured, and heavy with truth waiting to be revealed. Judy sat behind the bench, shoulders squared, glasses perched low on her nose, her pen tapping once, twice, against the wood. That small sound carried more weight than any gavel strike. Melissa Crane sat rigid in her chair. The crutches leaned neatly against her side, like obedient props waiting for direction. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but Judy's focus didn't break. She wasn't watching them. She was studying the details, the flinch in Melissa's fingers, the tension in her jaw, the half-second delay between a question and an answer. Those were tells. And Judy had spent a lifetime reading them. Mrs. Crane, Judy said, her tone deceptively calm. Let's review the day of your accident. Melissa's throat tightened. It was raining, she said quickly. I slipped on a wet floor in a grocery store. I hit my back and neck. Since then, I can't lift anything heavier than a coffee cup. Judy's pen stopped tapping. You filed your insurance claim 2 weeks later. Yes, Your Honor. And since then, no improvement. No, ma'am. I've been in physical therapy. But I can't do much. Judy's eyes flicked to the paperwork before her. Interesting. Because your therapist's report says you missed 7 sessions in a row. Melissa froze. I wasn't feeling well those weeks. Of course, Judy said softly, almost kindly. Though it seems you were well enough to post on Facebook about attending a friend's birthday party during that same time. The air in the courtroom thickened. Melissa blinked rapidly, fumbling for words. Her attorney's hand went up in protest, but Judy continued, voice never rising. Tell me something, Mrs. Crane. Did you dance at that party? No. Melissa snapped. It wasn't me dancing, that was, she stopped herself too late. The courtroom fell silent again. Judy tilted her head, expression unreadable. That was. Melissa swallowed hard. Just someone else wearing a similar dress. Judy didn't respond immediately. Instead, she glanced at the clerk. Please note that down, she said. Her tone was calm, but the words carried the sharpness of a blade. Mrs. Crane claims the woman dancing in Exhibit B is not her. The clerk nodded, typing briskly. The soft clack of keys echoed through the courtroom like ticking seconds before an explosion. What the audience didn't see was Judy's inner calculation. She'd been underestimated before. People mistook her patience for softness, her politeness for fragility. They didn't understand that beneath her restraint was steel forged from decades of fighting liars who smiled while they stole. She wasn't loud because she didn't need to be. The truth had its own volume, it just needed the right moment to speak. Mrs. Crane, Judy said finally, you're under oath. And I'd remind you, lying under oath doesn't just damage your case. It damages every honest person who walks through this courtroom. Melissa tried to nod, but her chin trembled. Her lawyer leaned closer, whispering frantically. Judy waited. She always waited. Lies collapse under their own weight when given enough silence. Finally, Melissa muttered, it was just a short clip. I didn't even move that much. Judy's brow arched slightly. So it was you. Melissa's eyes widened. I I mean, it was just one moment, Your Honor. And that one moment, Judy said evenly, is why we're all here. The audience stirred again, whispers fluttering like moths in the air. Judy ignored them. She focused on the woman before her, the unraveling mask, the quivering lip, the growing desperation. Truth wasn't just revealing itself, it was clawing its way out. Mrs. Crane, Judy continued, you filed sworn statements claiming you're incapable of standing without support. Yet the video shows you lifting your hands, turning, and dancing for 37 seconds. You smiled the entire time. Melissa's voice cracked. It was just for fun. I didn't think. That's right, Judy interrupted softly. You didn't think. You just acted. And actions, Mrs. Crane, speak a language your lies don't understand. The tension in the room felt electric. Every word carried moral weight. Even those who came expecting entertainment found themselves silent, caught between admiration for Judy's restraint and awe for her precision. The defense lawyer tried one last attempt. Your Honor, that video could have been edited or posted without my client's consent. Judy cut in sharply, eyes flashing. Then we'll subpoena the metadata. And if it matches the upload device registered to her account, we'll add perjury to the charges. Is that what you want to argue? The lawyer froze. No one dared move. For a moment, Judy just sat there, still as marble. In that silence, the world seemed to tilt in her favor, not because she held authority, but because she held integrity. She'd clawed her way to respect through truth, not theatrics. And even now, as the underdog, she wielded that truth like a quiet sword. Finally, she spoke, her tone low and deliberate. This court isn't a stage, Mrs. Crane. It's a mirror. And sooner or later, everyone ends up staring at their own reflection. Melissa looked down, tears gathering but never falling. Judy didn't gloat. She only sighed, a small, weary breath from someone who had seen too many good hearts tested by greed. Then she leaned back and closed her file. We'll take a short recess, she said simply. When we return, we'll hear from the insurance investigator. And I suggest, Mrs. Crane, that you prepare yourself. Because evidence doesn't forget. The gavel came down once. Sharp. Final. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving Judy sitting alone behind the bench. She looked out across the quiet space, rows of empty seats, faint echoes of footsteps fading into the hall. For a brief second, she let her guard drop. Being the underdog never ended. But neither did her fight. Because no matter how many liars the world produced, truth still had one ally she could count on. Her name was Judge Judy. The gavel struck once more, and silence fell like a curtain. When Judge Judy returned to the bench, something had shifted in the air. It wasn't anger, it was certainty. The kind that comes when the truth finally stops whispering and starts shouting. The audience sensed it too. Phones were pocketed, murmurs hushed. Everyone leaned in, knowing they were about to witness something unforgettable. Court is back in session, Judy announced, her voice steady as steel. Let's resume with Exhibit C. The clerk nodded, her hands moving carefully as she connected the courtroom monitor to a small laptop. Melissa Crane sat stiffly at the table, her fingers twisting a tissue into shreds. Her lawyer whispered urgently, but she wasn't listening. Her pulse was hammering too loudly in her ears. Judy folded her hands before her, elbows on the bench, gaze fixed on the screen. For the record, she said, this footage was obtained from a public Facebook account belonging to the plaintiff, Mrs. Melissa Crane. She paused for effect. And it's time-stamped 2 days after the date she claimed to have been rendered immobile. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Cameras clicked. The clerk pressed play. The video filled the screen. Laughter, music, bright lights. The frame shook slightly, someone filming with a phone. At the center of it all was Melissa herself. Same face, same hair, same sequined blue dress she'd worn in her profile picture. She was laughing, spinning, dancing in a crowded reception hall. Her movements were fluid, full of energy. Her crutches were nowhere in sight. A heavy stillness fell over the room. You could hear the faint buzz of the ceiling lights, the distant hum of an air vent. Even the bailiff's usual stoic posture shifted slightly, eyes narrowing. Judy didn't speak for several seconds. She didn't need to. The evidence spoke in perfect clarity. Finally, she leaned forward. "Mrs. Crane," she said quietly. "Is that you?" Melissa's lips parted. I don't know, it looks like me, but..." Judy raised one brow. "It looks like you, dances like you, and was posted from your verified account. Should I take that as coincidence or confession?" Melissa's lawyer stood abruptly. "Your Honor, we object to the introduction of this video without forensic verification." Judy's tone didn't rise, but her words cut through him like a blade. "Sit down, counselor. You're about to witness verification in real time." She turned back to Melissa, her eyes unblinking. "Mrs. Crane, this video has metadata linked directly to your mobile device. That means it was filmed and uploaded from your phone. Would you like me to read the GPS coordinates too?" The woman's face went pale. Her breathing quickened. The gallery's collective attention bore down on her like sunlight through glass. Judy leaned back, voice low but charged with authority. "You came into my courtroom wearing a brace, dragging those crutches like trophies of sympathy. You looked this court in the eye and swore you were disabled. But the only thing crippled here is your credibility." The words landed like thunder. Melissa's lawyer sank into his chair. The clerk froze mid-keystroke. Even the cameras seemed to stop recording for a heartbeat, as if afraid to interrupt the moment. Melissa stammered, I was having a good day. My therapist said I should try to move more." Judy didn't blink. "Your therapist also said you missed half your sessions. You were moving just fine, until you walked yourself into this courtroom with a story that doesn't match your steps." The audience broke into murmurs again. Some shook their heads, others whispered to one another. But Judy stayed perfectly composed. Inside, though, she felt something stir, not pride, not anger, but the bittersweet satisfaction of truth revealed. The underdog had finally turned the tide. She motioned for the clerk to pause the video on a single frame, Melissa laughing mid-spin, both feet off the ground. "Mrs. Crane," Judy said softly, "you told this court you couldn't stand longer than a minute. Yet here you are, airborne." Melissa's voice was small now. "I didn't mean to mislead anyone." Judy exhaled, the faintest hint of weariness crossing her face. "But you did. And every person who's fought through real pain, every honest claimant denied help because of fraud like this, they pay the price for your performance." Her tone deepened, every word deliberate. "You wanted sympathy. You got exposure." Melissa tried to speak, but no sound came. The lawyer beside her looked away, defeated. Judy's voice softened, but the edge in it remained. "You're not the first to mistake my kindness for blindness. But you might be the last to underestimate it." She turned to the clerk. "Mark Exhibit C as verified evidence." The clerk nodded quickly, typing the notation into record. The echo of keystrokes filled the silence. Judy continued, addressing the courtroom. "This is more than just one case. This is about the integrity of our system. Every false claim weakens the bridge of trust that justice stands on. And that bridge is already cracking." The audience was silent now. No one looked at Melissa anymore, they were watching Judy. The judge who had been doubted, dismissed, even mocked over the years for being too harsh or too human. But in this moment, she wasn't harsh. She was righteous. Not loud, but clear. Not angry, but resolute. She leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Crane, justice doesn't need a stage. It just needs a moment of truth. And you just gave it one." The bailiff stepped closer instinctively, sensing the gravity of what came next. Judy glanced his way. "We'll reconvene for closing arguments after lunch. Mrs. Crane, I strongly advise you to use this break to remember what honesty feels like." The gavel came down with a single, echoing strike. Outside, the hallway buzzed with murmurs and flashing cameras. The video had already gone viral, reporters streaming headlines across social media. Judge Judy exposes fake disability scam on air. But Judy didn't look at the headlines. She simply walked past them, coat over her arm, eyes calm. Inside that courtroom, she had done what she always did, stood up for truth in a world that kept trying to sell lies. And somehow, even after decades, she still had the strength to do it again tomorrow. Because even underdogs don't stay down when they fight for something real. When the court reconvened, the energy had changed completely. Gone was the sympathy that once lingered in the air. Now, the room pulsed with anticipation. Everyone knew what was coming, but no one knew just how far Judge Judy would take it. She wasn't there to humiliate Melissa, she was there to make a statement. One that would echo far beyond the walls of her courtroom. Judy adjusted her glasses, eyes locked on the trembling woman before her. The folders on her bench were stacked neatly, a visual reminder that facts, not emotions, would decide this day. She tapped her pen once, signaling the start. "Mrs. Crane," Judy began, her voice calm but with an edge that cut through the silence, "this court has reviewed your statements, your claims, and your videos. What we see is not a victim of injustice, but an architect of deceit." Melissa's breath caught. "I never meant to deceive anyone, Your Honor," she whispered. Judy leaned forward. "Intent isn't the issue here. Integrity is." That single line landed like a hammer. The crowd stilled. The defense attorney looked down, unable to meet her gaze. Even the bailiff shifted slightly, sensing the gravity of what was unfolding. Judy continued, voice unwavering. "You lied under oath. You attempted to defraud an insurance company out of $250,000. And worst of all, you weaponized empathy. You took advantage of the compassion people naturally have for those in pain. That, Mrs. Crane, is what disgusts me the most." Melissa's eyes glistened with tears, but Judy didn't soften. "You see, I've spent decades in this chair watching people try to twist the law to serve their greed. But what they forget," she said, tapping the bench for emphasis, "is that truth is patient. It may stumble. It may take time. But it never falls." The words echoed. They weren't just judgment, they were declaration. She turned to the clerk. "The court finds the plaintiff's claim fraudulent. The motion is dismissed with prejudice. All restitution and legal fees will be paid to the defendant insurance company." The clerk recorded it. The gavel hadn't even dropped yet, but everyone knew, it was over. Melissa covered her face, trembling. "Please, Your Honor. I made a mistake." Judy's tone softened, but her message didn't. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. And choices have consequences." She stood now, her robe catching the courtroom light, a symbol of earned authority. "Let this case remind everyone watching, truth doesn't need to shout to win. It just needs to stand long enough to be heard." Her gaze swept across the gallery, then back to Melissa. "Case dismissed." The gavel slammed, final and echoing. If you think karma takes its time, think again. Subscribe now, because Judy's next verdict will make this one look calm. The echo of the gavel still lingered long after the courtroom emptied. It was more than a sound, it was a signal. Truth had won, and deceit had been stripped bare under the weight of evidence. Melissa Crane sat slumped at her table, face hidden behind her trembling hands. Her crutches leaned uselessly beside her, props without purpose. The performance was over, and the audience, both inside and out, had seen everything. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the marble steps. Cameras flashed. Microphones extended like spears. The story had already gone viral. Judge Judy exposes fake disability fraud, the Facebook files. The clip of Judy's calm takedown had spread across social media within hours, shared millions of times. Headlines called it, "Justice in Real Time." Some called it, "Karma Live on Camera." Judy, meanwhile, stayed behind for a moment longer. She sat alone at her bench, quietly gathering her notes. The courtroom was empty now, but she could still feel the energy it held, the relief, the outrage, the vindication. She sighed softly, the weight of the moment settling into her shoulders. Being the underdog didn't mean being powerless. It meant carrying the fight when no one else would. Her bailiff approached. "That was something, Judge." Judy glanced up, her expression steady. "It's not something I enjoy," she said. "It's something that needed to be done." He nodded, understanding. The cameras outside didn't show this side of her, the quiet after the storm. They didn't see how much it cost to keep fighting for truth, day after day, in a world that often rewarded spectacle over sincerity. Outside, Melissa faced the consequences she had tried so hard to outrun. Her lawyer stood beside her, pale and silent, as reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Crane, do you have anything to say? Was it worth it? Do you regret lying to the court? Melissa didn't answer. Her silence was her confession. Across town, the insurance company issued a public statement, thanking Judge Judy for exposing the fraud. Donations poured in for a disability foundation that supported real victims, people who had lost everything, not through deception, but through misfortune. The case had become more than a legal story, it was a symbol. A reminder that justice wasn't a performance, it was a principle. That evening, Judy sat in her chambers, reading a letter that had arrived mid-trial. It was from a woman who had been denied benefits after an injury because of too many fraudulent claims in her district. The letter ended with 7 simple words: "Thank you for believing truth still matters." Judy folded the letter gently and smiled. Not a proud smile, but a tired one, the kind that belongs to someone who has seen too much but still chooses to fight. Outside, the courthouse lights dimmed, but one office window stayed glowing a little longer. Behind it, the underdog judge sat quietly, preparing for the next battle, for the next lie that thought it could win. Because in Judge Judy's courtroom, karma doesn't wait. It arrives right on schedule. The next morning, the courthouse steps were still buzzing with echoes of what had happened the day before. News vans lined the street, anchors recounting every second of the viral courtroom moment. But inside, beyond the noise and headlines, Judge Judy sat in her chambers, calm and composed, the weight of the case still lingering like the aftertaste of something bittersweet. She looked out her window, watching as people walked past, the same ordinary faces she'd sworn to protect from deception. Her reflection stared back at her through the glass, the face of a woman who had spent her life fighting for justice, not for applause, but for principle. The world saw her as fierce, unstoppable, unflinching. But she knew better. Every verdict, every confrontation, carried a cost. The underdog in her never rested. Her clerk entered quietly, holding a small envelope. "This came for you, Judge." From one of the viewers. Judy opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for standing up for honesty when it's easier to look away. You remind us that truth still wins." She held the note for a long moment, letting the words sink in. A rare warmth touched her face, a small reminder that her work, however draining, still mattered. Downstairs, the courtroom was being cleaned. The echoes of yesterday's drama were gone, replaced by the soft hum of vacuums and the smell of polish. But the energy lingered, invisible yet powerful, like an aftershock of integrity. Melissa Crane's name would fade from headlines soon, but the lesson she left behind wouldn't. Thousands of people online had commented beneath the viral clip, messages of gratitude, outrage, and reflection. Real victims had found their voices again. People shared their stories. And somewhere between the noise and the truth, justice had started to feel real again. Judy walked slowly toward the empty courtroom, each step steady. She ran her fingers across the edge of the bench, the polished wood smooth under her hand. One case at a time, she whispered to herself. That's how you keep the world honest. She took her seat for a moment, the same seat where she'd faced countless liars and countless truths. Her gaze drifted upward toward the flag hanging above the bench, a quiet symbol of the ideals she fought to uphold. Then she smiled faintly, shaking her head. "People think I like fighting," she murmured. "I don't. I just refuse to lose to a lie." The sound of footsteps echoed as the bailiff entered to prepare for the next hearing. Judy straightened her robe, the steel back in her spine, the calm back in her voice. Another case, another truth waiting to be uncovered. Because in her courtroom, justice wasn't a show, it was a promise. If this story reminded you that truth never limps, like this video right now. Comment, "Justice served," to stand with honesty, and subscribe, because next week's story will shake you even harder.